Hi, good evening everybody. My name is Maryke from sportsinjuryphysio.com, where you can get online treatment for your injuries. So tonight's live stream is all about calf strains, and especially if you're struggling with a calf strain that keeps on coming back. So just as you're getting back into your running, you pull your calf muscle again. This talk is definitely going to give you some information that may help you get through that. But before we get started, if you're new to the group, how these things work is you get to ask any questions you want in the comments and I'll keep an eye on them. I sometimes forget to look at them before I end the call. If that happens, I'll go and answer them all afterwards. And if you're watching this on replay, just feel free to ask your questions as well and tag me in there, either Maryke or Online Physio, and I will answer them as they come in. Okay, excellent. So why would you keep on getting calf strains once you've strained it a first time? Now, there are two main reasons. And the first is that you've not actually strengthened that calf muscle up properly before you've gone back to running and sport. And the second is something called neural tension, increased neural tension. And I'll get back to that in a little bit. It sounds quite complicated, but it's actually quite easy. Oh, cool. Hello, Vicky. Glad you could join us. So yeah, if you're joining in, make sure you say hello on the stream there, that I know that you're there and you can actually see me. Good. So what do I mean by lack of rehabilitation? Now, the best place to start, I think, is to explain what happens when you strain a calf muscle. So you're running along and then suddenly you pull up short with a muscle strain. Now, sometimes it can just feel like a tightness that comes on. Often my patients can describe it as a severe cramp. That's usually when the soleus, the deeper layer of the muscles, gets strained. But more often, it's quite a sharp, sudden sensation that you get, as if somebody's actually kicked you in the back of your calf. So what happens is you literally tear some of the muscle fibers, and depending on how many of those muscle fibers you tear, that will determine how bad your injury is. So we tend to grade, gosh, I can't even remember what the latest grading is, but they tend to grade muscle strains from, it used to be 1 to 3. I think we're 1 to 5 now. I'm not sure. But basically, it depends on how much pain you have and how much function you have. So a grade 1, 2 strain, you've got a bit of pain, but the muscle can function still pretty well. And then from a 2 to 3 strain, you start losing some strength in that muscle because you've now torn quite a significant number of muscle fibers. So how does the body heal that muscle? It first has to absorb those muscle fibers that you've torn because it's got to get the rubbish out of the way. And it does that through an inflammatory response. So it's really important to not actually take anti-inflammatories unless you're having severe pain. To be honest, paracetamols are probably better than anti-inflammatories in those first few days, because what the research has shown, if you suppress that inflammatory response too much, you actually mess with your healing process. Okay, so the first 3 to 5 days is an inflammatory response where you get rid of the fibers that you've injured. And then from around day 3 or 5, depending on how bad the injury is, you start forming new cells. Now, these new muscle fibers and muscle cells aren't strong yet. They are basically the minimum requirement of a cell at that point. So the body has to replace those over time with stronger ones that can get the muscle as strong as you want it. So have a think. You've worked that muscle over quite a few years to get it to the strength that it was before you tore it. So we'll talk about that as the capacity the muscle had to cope with exercise at that point. As soon as you tear the muscle fibers, the capacity of that muscle to cope with strain and exercise decreases. The new muscle fibers aren't strong yet, so they have to be built up over time to get you back to the capacity you need to do your sport. So can you see that if you're just going to rest and not actually strengthen that muscle slowly and then jump back into your running or into your football, whatever sport you prefer, that you're likely going to re-injure that muscle because you've not strengthened those fibers up. So how do you strengthen them up? Well, just like you would go and build big muscles in the gym, through slowly increasing the load on them. And especially at the beginning, pain is quite a good indication of what you can do. I would definitely say if you have pain with any activity you do, then that's not the activity that you should be doing at that point. So you've got to choose strengthening exercises that's tough to do in that they're hard to do or a little bit hard, but they're not painful. Then you will get a strengthening effect. Also, if we think of the calf muscle, how it functions is it has to have quite a bit of explosive strength in there. So yes, while it's good to build your regular strength and get that muscle to be able to contract in a strong way, you also have to get it used to contract explosively over time. So my treatment programs for my athletes always include specific strengthening for those calf muscles, graded programs starting with easy, getting to harder, and then including explosive activities. Now, depending on the athlete in front of me, if the person is just a recreational runner, I will likely use running actually to get them back to explosive activities. If they are a higher level athlete, I'll probably use some plyometrics, but you've got to implement them quite carefully because they can re-injure if you're not ready for them. And then it's important to do a slow return to running program, because as soon as you do your first run session, it's quite a step up in the capacity that it has to cope now and the amount of strain it's got to cope with, to go from just walking and strength training to actually running and landing on that calf muscle repetitively. If your sport is something like basketball or volleyball that involves a lot of jumping, that's even a lot more strain. So you've got to ease into it even more carefully. Now, to give you an idea of how long a muscle strain takes to recover, if it's a grade 1, a very simple one, it takes at least 4 weeks to get back to your previous capacity where you were before you injured it. And it's not 4 weeks of just sitting still, it's actually 4 weeks of going through that graded exercise program and return to running or whatever sport you're doing. If you've given it a significant strain, it can take 8 to 12 weeks. So 12 weeks is the normal time period I get people with severe strains to get back. But if it's if it's really, really bad, it can take more than 12 weeks. The other problem is the older you get, the longer it takes. And I find that a lot of my athletes, as soon as they, especially the male athletes, when they hit 50, there's as if there's a switch that turns over and their muscles, and especially their calf muscles, it's as if they just become stiffer and they take a much longer time to recover. And you often see re-injury a lot more commonly. So I find that I've got to really ease them back into their running and make sure they do all the strength training. Otherwise, they can really struggle. The athletes who are in their 20s, they usually do better with a rehab and they can progress really quickly. And it is just about healing times being quicker when you're younger versus when you're older. But also, it ties in with my second point about the neural tension. The older you get, the more likely you've also had other small injuries to your lower back and other things that can make the nerves tight in the legs. Now, what do I mean by neural tension? As we move, so you know our nervous system are continuous from like the brain at the top, then your spinal cord, and then it goes into your peripheral nerves that runs into your fingertips and into your toes. And that system is continuous. So if I, for instance, move my neck down, my whole spinal cord just slides up a tiny little bit, and then it slides back down. And that's quite normal. That's how it's meant to move. If I stretch my arms out, the nerves slide along the sides. And if I move my neck that way, it will slide towards that side and the opposite. Similarly, when we walk, as your legs goes forwards and backwards, your nerves are meant to slide, and it's mainly the sciatic and femoral nerves are meant to slide freely in your legs from your lower back. Now, if for some reason something is just holding on to that nerve a little bit, so we're not talking about a proper injury even, like a disc bulge or anything pressing on that nerve to the point where you've got pain. It can be subtle. It can be like really tight muscles. It can be that your lower back is just not flexible and therefore not allowing it to slide. There are several reasons why the nerve may not be free to slide. Then what happens is, instead of sliding, it's now being stretched. And unfortunately, the calf muscle is the end of that stretch. And that's often where you then get recurring strains because it's just not free to move. And it's either the calf muscle or the hamstring that takes it. And they're starting to identify that as a specific hamstring strain actually in footballers, where it acts exactly like it would act as if you've strained a muscle, but then when they use an MRI scan to check where the muscle strain is, they can't find any signs. And they think it is more that neural system that's actually taken a bit of strain. So it sounds like a mouthful and it sounds quite worrying, but it's actually quite easy to fix and it's quite easy to test for. And it's something that I always test with my online clients as well. So let me show you how easy it is to do via video feed. So I'm just going to move you back a little bit that you can see me better and bring this down. Now, I haven't got the best chair for this tonight. It's better if you have a more solid chair. But now, remember that I told you that the nervous system is continuous from the brain all the way down to the tips of my toes. So can you see, if I'm going to roll up my spine and extend my leg and pull my toes back, I'm winding that string up. If I bend my knee, I give it some slack again. So how we can test whether your sciatic nerve, specifically in this case, is a bit stuck somewhere that it doesn't want to slide properly, is you place your hands behind your back, you place your chin on your chest, and then you slouch down. But now you're not leaning forwards as far as you can, you're slouching with your back down. If you find you can't actually slouch down, that you're staying up there, that's already an indication that your back is quite tight. And in those cases, I find that the slump test isn't as sensitive. So we need you to do a proper slump forwards. Now, it's important to keep your chin on your chest throughout as well. And what you do then is you slowly extend your one leg and see if you can pull your toes towards you. Now, you may not be able to straighten your knee fully, which could be your hamstring that's tight, or it can be the nerve. And the only way you can distinguish is if you take your head all the way up to the ceiling, does that allow you to straighten your leg out more? And does that allow that pull to be less? If the answer is yes, if it changes with how you move your neck, then actually the nerve may be part of your problem. There's quite a few different variations of that we can pin it down a little bit more by making you move your foot and making you move different parts of it to see where exactly that comes from. But that's how easy it is to test via video call. If it is the nerve that's not free to slide, we then will go further and establish why it's not free to slide. So if you know that you've got back pain, then that's something we've got to look at. Do you have an injury there? Is it just stiffness? 9 times out of 10, people don't know that they've got back pain or any issues there. And in those cases, I find that it's more a stiff lower back, and they often have a history of having had a back injury before. And I find that flexibility exercises can make a big difference there. There's no one size fits all with that though, because different back injuries can be sensitive to different stretches and things. So you've got to find kind of the variation that works for you. But what I will say is if you find that it's tight, then the one thing you don't want to start with is very strong hamstring stretches, because you will likely make it worse. You've got to loosen off the bits where it's holding on to the nerve first before you go and stretch those hamstrings out. Okay, good. So to recap, 2 main reasons why your calf muscle strain can keep coming back. And by far the most common reason for that is people who don't go through proper rehab. Okay, and by rehab I mean strengthening it up properly and then slowly returning to your type of sport. So be that running or jumping or whatever, and introducing it at a level that's right for that muscle. And then the second one, that's not that common, but for some people, especially if you're over 45, that area could be a problem, is if you've got increased neural tension in your legs. And it's quite easy to test for. And in that case, you want to work on flexibility around the areas that's identified as being the stiff issue first, while you do your rehab still, because you still have a calf strain, but you've got to sort that neural tension out at the same time. Excellent. So let me know if you've got any questions. And remember, if you need help with any injuries, I do online consultations via Skype, sometimes WhatsApp, depending on what application you want to use. And I can create a treatment program that's bespoke for you and we can follow it all up via email and more calls if you wanted to. Take care, guys. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you would like to learn more about preventing sports injuries, make sure you hit the subscribe button. See you next time.